My boyfriend Malcolm ended things, absolutely finito, because I wouldn't hand over my entire emergency services bonus for a ridiculously elaborate, top-tier streaming setup for his fledgling online persona. He'd been fixated on this pro-level studio, 4K cameras, multi-monitor arrays, sci-fi headsets, to broadcast himself playing video games to maybe 30 consistent viewers. My entire bonus, earned from extra nurse shifts, was earmarked for crushing student loan debt and a proper emergency fund, essential for an emergency responder. I navigate chaotic trauma bays, making life-impacting decisions. Yet my hard-earned cushion was disposable cash for Malcolm's digital empire. Worse, this narcissist plastered a post across gaming forums and local community groups, painting me as selfish, unsupportive, and sabotaging his future by withholding funds. He called me a selfish gold digger, ironic since he demanded my money I bleed for, while he lounged in his gaming chair strategizing streams. Now, thanks to his viral pity party, half the internet and my professional network think I'm a cold-hearted monster for not backing his dreams. The verbose, self-pitying posts spread relentlessly across local healthcare Facebook groups and our hospital's internal platform. A blood-curdling breach of decorum. My colleague, Sarah, pulled me aside in the break room, phone in hand, during a 10-minute lunch. She showed me Malcolm's post. Nausea washed over me, my face sheet white. I wished I could disappear. Still reeling, I defended myself in the comments, explaining my bonus was for essential financial stability. Rent, car payments, food, and crushing student loans. Malcolm, displaying spectacular emotional immaturity, lost his mind. He called, rage barely contained. While I stocked for fluids, he screamed, demanding I delete my comments or he'd unleash screenshots of private texts and recordings of intimate calls. Deeply personal confessions, emotional dumps, family history, professional struggles. Everything I'd shared in trust he threatened to weaponize. If I didn't comply, he chillingly said, everyone would see my fragile, unstable, inept self. Incandescent fury erupted within me, a silent earthquake. In my scrubs, antiseptic filling my nostrils, I desperately kept my voice low, maintaining composure so colleagues and patients wouldn't overhear his vile threats. Who blackmails with shared vulnerabilities? What man threatens his adored woman with public humiliation and ruin for not bankrolling his petty ambitions? I excused myself, muttering about a phantom page, retreating to the cramped, cold employee bathroom. Locking the door, I leaned against the chipped paint, my body shaking with internal combustion rage. Then his infuriating, condescending mother, Barbara, injected herself beyond Malcolm's online tantrum. She sent a lengthy, passive-aggressive message on the hospital's staff social group, accusing me of bringing this spectacle upon myself for not being supportive of her son's entrepreneurial aspirations. Her sanctimonious epistle, straight from a 1950s etiquette guide, lectured how a dedicated woman sacrifices everything for her man's future, especially streaming peripherals. She was profoundly disappointed in my selfish attitude. Her 32-year-old son was melting down because I wouldn't bankrupt myself for his glorified hobby, a career of mostly complaining about internet connections. Barbara, perfectly coiffed, lectured that women her age understood their primary role was to uplift and enable men. Ma'am, this is a 21st century ER, not your mid-century kitchen. Meanwhile, Malcolm posted smug updates on his gaming channels, claiming he'd put me in my place, and that women these days lack loyalty to a partner's vision. His sycophantic gaming buddies egged him on with misogynistic slurs. My inbox flooded with messages, mostly from strangers, telling me I was selfish, ungrateful, and didn't deserve Malcolm. One gamergirl_4eva stated I should be lucky a talented man like Malcolm would include me. The sheer volume of vitriolic hate made me physically ill, a churning pit of dread. Yet I compulsively read every word, each a fresh wound. The kicker, his pro-level streaming setup, custom desk, soundproofing, high-end cameras, lighting, top PC, non-negotiable accessories, cost a staggering $12,000-$15,000. He expected me to liquidate my entire bonus from months of exhausting ER work, plus future paychecks, so he could pretend to be an internet sensation, accumulating followers slower than a sloth. When I, with what little calm remained, pointed out my crippling student loan payments, car insurance, grocery bills, and half the rent, he, with a straight face, told me those were my problems to figure out. The man who consumes half my groceries, sleeps beside me, and expects me to cook and clean while he works, declared my basic living expenses were solely my concern, demanding I finance his delusional fantasy. I earn roughly $60,000 pre-tax as an ER nurse. He wanted over a quarter of my annual income, not for shared investment, but for a fancier setup than his friend Graham, a successful full-time streamer. I'd been with Malcolm for just over 2.5 years. We moved into my apartment last summer when he was couch surfing after eviction. Before this obsession, things were decent enough, meaning boundaries eroded and domestic/emotional labor shifted onto me. He works sporadically, freelance graphic design that rarely covers his bills, spending the rest building his brand. Glued to games or doom-scrolling analytics. The Pro Studio obsession began 3 months ago when Graham, his successful streamer friend, upgraded his setup. Suddenly, Malcolm deemed his perfectly adequate rig embarrassing, and beneath him. He spent hours nightly on tech reviews, showing me prohibitively expensive equipment. Annoyed I didn't share his manic enthusiasm for draining my savings. When I suggested he save his own money or explore budget options, he scoffed, saying I didn't understand his vision. His vision involved me handing over my bonus and paychecks while he kept his freelance income for whims. He, with a straight face, said real couples make sacrifices, but in his twisted narrative, all sacrifice came from me. Last month, his demands grew aggressive. He'd bring up the studio daily, at dinner watching TV before bed, even during my rushed morning routine. Droning on about how this elite setup would change his life, give him unshakable confidence, and elevate him to successful content creator status. He insisted he deserved nice things after working so incredibly hard. And as his partner, I should help make that future a reality. When I pushed back, pointing out I also worked incredibly hard in a community-serving job, deserving basic needs and financial stability, he scoffed. He said my job was different because his aspiring influencer career had limitless potential, while nursing was temporary until I found something better. I genuinely like my job. I'm good at it and find meaning helping people. I wasn't looking for something different until he decided my stable, respected, impactful career wasn't impressive enough or worthy of financial autonomy. He even showed me a meticulously detailed spreadsheet, a financing calculator outlining how much of my upcoming bonuses and paychecks he'd require. A blueprint of my financial subjugation, pre-planned as if I'd consented to this ruinous arrangement. When I finally, unequivocally said absolutely not, my voice shaking, he got that chilling, wounded entitlement look, as if I'd personally insulted him. Then, with a dramatic sigh, he declared I was selfish and unsupportive, saying he needed to reconsider our entire relationship if I wouldn't invest in our future together. A future where he had an expensive streaming setup and I subsisted on instant ramen. I tried explaining my financial realities. $500 monthly student loan payments, vital car insurance to get to my demanding job, thus earning the money he extorted. He waved away concerns as mere excuses, condescendingly saying I wasn't thinking creatively enough. His creative solution involved begging my struggling parents for thousands, grueling overtime shifts, or selling belongings. My parents, already stretching retirement from my student loans, aren't philanthropists. I already work grueling full-time hours, often double shifts, leaving me exhausted. What stuff was I to sell? My uniform? Honestly, after the insidious threats, public humiliation, digital shaming, and Barbara's toxic reinforcement, a fundamental shift occurred. I was no longer the girl trying to be empathetic about his absurd streaming dreams. The disrespect, manipulation, and weaponization of my vulnerabilities crossed a deep personal line I didn't know I had, until Malcolm and his enabler mother stomped all over it. Malcolm, deluded, believes his vile threats and pathetic social media campaign have me cornered. Convinced I'll cave to stop the drama and revert to his supportive, acquiescent girlfriend, he's profoundly mistaken. First update. After a grueling shift, I dragged myself home. My phone buzzed. Malcolm. I dreaded it but expected it, given Barbara's ominous cafeteria warning. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but I knew he'd relentlessly call. Honestly, after Barbara's abusive ambush, I was in a morbid mood to watch him dig a deeper hole of self-delusion. Sometimes, with such transparently manipulative people, you just give them enough rope to hang themselves with their own words. He started with a fake, casual tone, asking about my day as if he hadn't just orchestrated his mother to verbally assault me at work. Cutting through his pretense, my voice steady, I asked point blank if he dispatched Barbara to ambush me, or if she concocted that damaging plan herself. Malcolm immediately launched into his defensive posture, voice aggrieved, insisting Barbara was concerned about our struggling relationship and wanted to help me understand his perspective. He audaciously suggested Barbara thought hearing from another woman about how relationships truly function might get through to me in a way his insufficient masculine attempts couldn't. The suffocating condescension, especially how relationships truly function, made my hand twitch to hurl my phone. I told him, with righteous indignation, that sending his mommy to corner me in a hospital cafeteria, a sacred professional space, and lecture me about values was not helping our relationship. Instead, it illuminated the emotionally stunted, manipulative man he was beneath his ambition. His fragile composure cracked. He grew annoyed, sputtering I was twisting everything and painting his family as villains when they were trying to save our relationship from my selfishness. Then, like a con artist, he launched into a self-pitying monologue, disappointed by my unreasonable reaction to his simple request for support. He declared he'd reflected and realized the problem was my inability to comprehend the setup's incredible importance to his future success. He used future success without irony, as if a top-tier gaming PC would magically accelerate his sporadic viewership into an empire. I interjected, feigning curiosity, asking how a high-end webcam and RGB lighting would improve his performance or business acumen. He grew furious, snapping I was deliberately obtuse, missing the bigger picture. He then veered into a tedious discourse on image, confidence, and how truly successful people invest in things that project success, a veiled justification for his desires. He accused me of thinking small and holding us back with my limited mindset. The transparent manipulation and gaslighting were so obvious I almost burst into laughter. This 32-year-old man tried to convince me demanding my vital emergency fund, earned saving lives, was a reasonable, necessary step towards his future. Using tactics likely successful before, but I saw through every ploy, guilt trip, and pathetic attempt to make me feel selfish for having financial needs. What pathetic loser gaslights his girlfriend into financing his delusional hobby? Listening, his desperation and transparency were embarrassing. Healthy boyfriends don't hold partners' private vulnerabilities hostage for money. That Malcolm believed this acceptable solidified he was the narcissistic man I'd wasted my time with. Then he sank lower. Smugly, he said his gaming friends unanimously agreed I was unreasonable and selfish. He name-dropped Graham, claiming Graham's girlfriend, Emily, helped with the upfront investment because she understood his success was their shared success. I sharply pointed out the monumental difference. Graham and Emily were engaged for 5 years, planning finances as responsible adults, not one partner unilaterally demanding everything. Malcolm, deflecting, said that was exactly his point. Real couples made these investments collectively. With breathtaking audacity, he claimed this expensive setup wasn't just wanting something nice, but proving we were ready to take our relationship to the next level. He declared couples unwilling to make financial sacrifices weren't ready for marriage and shouldn't be wasting each other's precious time. So in his twisted mind, bankrupting myself for his hobby was a relationship test to prove I was marriage material, transforming his selfish want into a measuring stick for my commitment. I calmly asked if my emergency fund was a non-negotiable prerequisite for our future. He, without hesitation, reiterated successful relationships require sacrifice and compromise from both partners. When I pointed out all sacrifice came from my side while he hoarded his meager earnings, he erupted. Yelling, he called me dramatic and turning everything into a gender war, instead of recognizing his selfless efforts to build something better for both of us. He even claimed the setup would benefit me too, because I'd ride in the glow of his success and be seen with someone who truly had his life together. This deluded fool believed I should be thankful for financially crippling myself so he could look cool to online buddies. I told him with contempt, if he wanted to impress people, use his own damn money. Then, demonstrating profound disrespect, he sneeringly said my ER nurse job wasn't a real career anyway, just something temporary. He added chillingly, since I wasn't investing in my own future, I should invest in his. Speechless, I couldn't comprehend his gall dismissing my demanding, vital career. I'd worked 3 years, proud of helping people, but none of it mattered in his warped worldview. When I finally found my voice, simmering with rage, telling him my career was important, he laughed dismissively. He said I was defensive about a mere job anyone could do. He continued, oblivious, that if I was serious about a real career, I'd be improving myself instead of making pathetic excuses about bills. The disrespect was so complete I almost pitied him. Imagine such insecurity that you belittle your partner's honest work to feel better about your own meager efforts. I snapped, telling him my job saved lives. Unlike his career, of pushing pixels and complaining about latency, predictably, he went over the edge, screaming I was cruel, attacking him personally during a constructive conversation about our shared future. He accused me of showing my true colors. It was utterly hypocritical. He just trashed my career, now lectured me about hurt feelings. Breathtaking absurdity. Then he waxed philosophical about reconsidering our relationship, wondering if I was the partner he needed for the incredible life he wanted to build. He declared successful men need supportive women who understand short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. Exhausted, I asked what gains I'd reap from bankrupting myself. He responded I'd gain a boyfriend who felt confident and successful, a better, more fulfilled partner. So my reward for destroying my stability was a slightly happier, less insecure Malcolm. His twisted, narcissistic logic was so insane I burst into incredulous laughter. I told him if his confidence depended on my emergency savings, he should address his self-esteem, not make it my financial responsibility. That, as expected, genuinely set him off. He yelled accusations about me being mean and unsupportive. Then inevitably he brought up social media, reminding me of his viral post and negative comments. Smugly, he said he'd received a lot of support from people who truly understood his frustration. He suggested I read some of the comments for better perspective. He actually proposed anonymous internet strangers calling me names might help me see the error of my ways. I swore. At this moment, fury gave way to mirth. I cracked up a hysterical laugh. I told him taking relationship advice from random social media strangers was as intelligent as asking ChatGPT for his business plan. Seriously, Malcolm, what's next? Horoscopes? Psychic mediums for follower counts? The fact he believed online comments were valid advice, not troll bile, cemented how disconnected from reality his fragile ego was. I told him anyone demanding their girlfriend's entire emergency bonus wasn't someone whose opinion I valued, and he should get validation from people who understood healthy relationships. He grew more defensive, accusing me of making fun of him, which, of course, only made me laugh harder. Malcolm, out of arguments, deployed his ultimate weapon, the nuclear option, his voice lowered to a chilling, menacing tone. He reminded me of our private texts, intimate calls, and vulnerable confessions. With veiled malice, he hoped he wouldn't have to share those with anyone, but desperately needed to know I was taking the situation seriously. Linking my cooperation to my privacy, he chillingly stated he had screenshots and recordings that might not look great out of context. A transparent threat. The blackmail was clear. Give him the money, my bonus, or he'd unleash private conversations and manipulate them to make me look unstable, unprofessional, bad. He held our relationship's intimacy hostage for his gaming rig. I told him, my voice cold, that threatening my privacy was not the act of someone who loved or respected me. He grew defensive, backtracking, insisting he wasn't threatening anything, just pointing out our private conversations should probably remain private. An absurd contortion, but the insidious threat was obvious. Comply or face public consequences. Honestly, at this soul-crushing point, I was morbidly impressed by his despicable ways. Public humiliation, financial manipulation, emotional blackmail, career dismissal, and now weaponizing my privacy. He systematically went down a perverse checklist of abusive behaviors, trying each one, desperate to break me. About to hang up, disgusted, he uttered something that clarified his sinister motive. This campaign was about more than a gaming setup. His voice self-important, he said he'd deeply thought about our future, needing to know I was the kind of woman who would unequivocally support his grand ambitions. He dropped the ultimate manipulation. If I couldn't even do this one thing, how could he trust me for bigger challenges successful couples face? In Malcolm's warped mind, this wasn't about a setup. It was establishing power. He wanted to prove he could make unreasonable, crippling demands and I, subservient, would comply. He wanted to condition me to prioritize his wants over my basic needs, to manipulate me into financial dependence and emotional submission, cementing his control. The call, an agonizing ordeal, dragged for an hour, him relentlessly trying angles, always circling back to, give him my money, surrender my bonus, accept. His selfish wants were more important than my needs. He never acknowledged his demands were unreasonable or my legitimate concerns about financial survival. By the time he ran out of gas, voice hoarse, I was exhausted, my spirit drained trying to articulate boundaries, responsibility, and respect to someone seemingly incapable of comprehending others' needs mattered. Malcolm, ever the manipulator, ended by declaring benevolently he'd graciously give me until Friday to think and make the right decision, implying only one acceptable outcome, proof of my love. He never offered a single apology for the public humiliation, threats, career dismissal, or emotional abuse. He was relentlessly focused on his gaming rig, too bothered to pretend to care how his cruel behavior affected me. Last update. I'm living for what happened Friday, needing to share every glorious detail, far more satisfying than any vengeful fantasy. Friday morning, Malcolm's deadline to meekly cave arrived. Instead, I decided to stop talking in circles and take action. Thursday night, after endless turmoil, I called my dad, pouring out the horrific saga. Malcolm demanding my bonus, vile threats, Barbara ambushing me. My perpetually even-tempered dad was furious, his voice dangerously low, unable to fathom such cruelty. Friday morning, he called again. I'd called in sick, too raw to handle ER emergencies. He said good, he had business to handle, and wanted me as a witness. Here's the perfect part. My dad's coworker, Kenneth, a gossipy sort, unknowingly stumbled upon Malcolm's viral post on a gaming forum and our community Facebook group. He called my dad that morning, uproariously laughing about this pathetic loser, demanding his girlfriend's paycheck for a fancy gaming setup. Kenneth, oblivious, read the nasty comments calling me a gold digger. When my dad, chillingly calm, informed Kenneth who the post was about, Kenneth's laughter died. He went utterly silent, jaw-dropping. Then my dad, a man of few but impactful words, simply stated he needed to have a conversation with this boy about how men are supposed to treat women. Kenneth, galvanized by shock and indignation, immediately offered to come as backup. My dad picked me up, and we drove straight to the Nexus, Malcolm's trendy gamer hub/internet cafe, his professional office. I, hesitant, suggested it wasn't diplomatic, but my dad, eyes fixed on the road, shook his head. No man would publicly humiliate or threaten his daughter and get away with it. Not on his watch. Malcolm was about to learn, publicly, what happens when you mess with the wrong family. My dad, with unshakable authority, marched into the bustling gaming hub. The receptionist stammered, but my dad loudly stated he needed to speak with Malcolm immediately about the malicious lies he'd been spreading about his daughter online. Half the cafe went silent. Drawn by impending drama, Malcolm, smugly editing a video, emerged. His face went sickeningly white when he saw me behind my dad. My dad, despising small talk, wasted no time. He asked Malcolm, deceptively calm, if he'd posted online demanding his girlfriend's emergency bonus, then called her a selfish gold digger for refusing. Malcolm stuttered, insisting it was a massive misunderstanding, that social media posts don't tell the nuanced story. My dad cut him off. There was no misunderstanding about a grown man shamelessly demanding hard-earned money for a toy gaming setup, then publicly crying online when she had the decency to say no. The cafe was silent, Malcolm wishing he could combust. My dad, voice level but forceful, asked what kind of man threatens his loved one with public humiliation for refusing to bankrupt herself for his wants. Malcolm blustered that private relationship issues shouldn't be discussed at his workplace. My dad retorted he should have thought of that before making private issues public, letting strangers trash my reputation. Then my dad, voice steely, launched a relentless verbal assault. He'd raised 3 independent daughters, never teaching them real men beg for money, send mothers to fight battles, or throw tantrums for selfish whims. He asked Malcolm if his own father knew what kind of man he'd raised, because any decent father would be ashamed. Malcolm turned crimson, trying to stutter a response, but my dad wasn't finished. He called it embarrassing, profoundly immature, watching a man his age act like a spoiled child. He said Malcolm should have spent less time planning to manipulate women, more time learning financial responsibility. With a dramatic sweep, my dad turned to Malcolm's wide-eyed coworkers and fellow gamers, asking them if they'd ever seen anything quite like this. A grown man expect his girlfriend to shoulder his bills while he squandered her emergency savings on glorified entertainment. He concluded real men protect and provide. They don't leech off women and emotionally abuse them when money fails to materialize. Malcolm's ashen, humiliated face was beautiful. His coworkers stared, whispered. He visibly realized his fake online reputation was being destroyed. An older cafe regular said, "Never heard of anything so ridiculous." Then my dad dropped the devastating ultimatum. Malcolm had until midnight to get every pathetic thing out of my apartment. Anything left would be tossed by Saturday. He'd forfeited the privilege of living with a woman too good for his selfishness the moment he publicly humiliated her for not funding his fantasies. Malcolm panicked, begging for more time, stammering he couldn't possibly find a new place that quickly. My dad, unmoved, said that wasn't his problem. Perhaps Barbara could take him in. My dad, laced with contempt, added Malcolm was lucky to get until midnight, not thrown out immediately, which would have happened if he'd raised such a disrespectful son. He firmly reiterated to Malcolm that real men don't threaten women, manipulate for money, or send their mothers to harass girlfriends like a pathetic, mama's boy. Then my dad did something I'll carry forever. He calmly pulled out his phone and started recording. He stated, voice resonating, that since Malcolm believed public humiliation effective, perhaps he'd offer a public apology now. Malcolm, terrified, begged him not to record. Whimpering his streaming job was in jeopardy. My dad, unmoved, said Malcolm should have considered consequences before acting like a manipulative boy. But he was recording, red light a beacon of justice. He calmly told Malcolm his choice. Explain why financial abuse and emotional blackmail were acceptable, or apologize genuinely and specifically for being a lying, manipulative coward who picks on women because he's too weak to handle adult responsibilities. The cafe was silent, every person riveted. Malcolm looked at his coworkers, fellow gamers, his meager online audience, all staring with disgust and pity, and utterly broke down. He sobbed, shoulders shaking, stammering that he was so sorry, and that he'd made terrible mistakes, and that he knew, with undeniable certainty, he didn't deserve someone like me. My dad, unwavering, kept recording and told Malcolm, his voice cutting through the pathetic sobs, to be explicitly specific about what he was truly apologizing for and, more importantly, why he ever thought it was remotely acceptable to treat women like emotional ATMs with benefits. There he was, Malcolm, sobbing uncontrollably before his professional world, openly admitting on camera that he had systematically attempted to financially manipulate his girlfriend and threaten her into funding his expensive gaming setup through public humiliation, emotional blackmail, and the weaponization of her deepest vulnerabilities. It was the most pathetic, humiliating thing I'd ever witnessed. This grown man, who'd strutted around acting powerful, completely fell apart the moment someone with genuine strength stood up to his insidious abuse. His coworkers looked at him like he was profoundly insane, and honestly, who could possibly blame them?